In this episode, we are taking one healthy scoop of nostalgia and mixing it with one unhealthy scoop of regret. Together, we have baked a Toys I Wish I Still Had cake. So, stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name is Rob, and in this episode, we are talking about more toys I wish I still had from when I was a kid. I'm really sorry about the cake analogy. It just kind of came together, and I hope it works. If it doesn't, it's still cake. Everyone loves cake. But anyway, these are toys that, honestly, I wish I still had. And, of course, I'm looking at it from a collector's viewpoint. Not that I want to sell these or anything like that, but just that I want to surround myself with them like all the other toys in my collection. These are just toys that, for one reason or another, I don't have anymore. Some of them broke, some of them were purged, because I came from a household where if you wanted something new, you had to give up something old. I mean, a lot of times it worked out for the better because I could donate them to people that wanted them. In other aspects, I mean, like I said, I'm viewing it now, and I wish I didn't let those things go. But honestly, I'm sure they helped someone out at the time. And I know it's going to be a shot in the dark to ever get any of them in my collection again because, as we have seen in our hunting episodes, prices are insane nowadays. So it's just a little bit of sadness of I can't afford them now, so I wish I would have kept them then. Anyway, we're going to talk about a little bit of everything, and I'll give what backstory I can and just bask in the nostalgia of it. So anyway, without further ado, let's get to number one. Number one is a classic Disney toy. I don't know if it's classic to the world at large, but classic to me at least. And I had no idea at this point in my life I would be such a Disney fan. Of course, when I'm a kid, it's Disney, and you just kind of, blended into the background of our lives. But now, I really, appreciate all those old movies I grew up with, and I wish I still had this. These are Mickey and Goofy Tricycles, made by Gabriel Toys in 1977. Now, I have a really vivid recollection of having these, and I'll explain that in a second, but I highly doubt it's from 1977. I would have only been 1 year old, so I'm sure it was a few years after that, and I'm pretty sure I didn't get them new. They're probably from the Goodwill or what have you. Now, these little tricycle toys were some of my favorites. I only remember one specific story. I don't know what happened to them, other than I think maybe they broke. Because what you do is you push the little tricycle and their legs would move like they were actually pedaling. And I remember that, it was like if you remember really old telephone cord or like electric cord, it had like a fabric covering, and their legs had like this, I guess, nylon covering to it, and they would pedal and go, and I had a lot of fun. Now, the one story that I remember vividly, which I'm just throwing it in, it'll probably bore you, but I grew up in a very old house. So old, in fact, that under our bathroom, it was like a I can't even say basement. It was like a crawl space. And I remember my dad was like redoing it, building the floor out. And I remember, driving these little tricycles over the joists and stuff of the floor that he was building. And I remember the dirt underneath, and that's pretty much as my memory goes. But those little bits were very vivid. Now, yeah, I don't know what happened to these. I don't know where these fit in the hierarchy of Disney collectibles or anything like that. I just remember really loving them. And like I said, I'm a Disney fan now, and my mind instantly went back to these just on a whim, and yeah, it just like a longing of like probably one of my earliest toy memories. I know, really weird. Sorry I bored you. So let's get to number 2. Number 2 comes from one of my favorite toy lines of all time. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them anymore, and we'll get into that, unfortunately. But yeah, they are from the Cops toy line, which was released by Hasbro in 1988. The figures were Bowser and Blitz, who were the canine and dog members of the Cops team. Now, Blitz was a robotic dog, and you got this little robotic dog with a movable jaw, and he had a little siren light on the top of his body that he had a little knob on the bottom that you would spin it, and it had reflectors on it, so it kind of gave the impression of, you know, whirling lights. And Bowser, I mean, just awesome. All the Cops figures were awesome. They were bigger, chunkier, had pretty much all the same articulation of a G.I. Joe figure. For some reason, they just didn't go anywhere like G.I. Joe did. Maybe it was just because the year they came out, they were ahead of their time, behind the times. Either way. Now, I had a lot of Cops figures because they happened to be on the clearance shelves, and they were readily available from what I can remember. So I had a lot of the really cool figures. I pretty much had all the ones that I wanted, and yeah, times were cool. Unfortunately, one of the biggest toy regrets in my entire life revolves around Cops. Unfortunately, I was kind of talked into this by a friend of mine, but I gathered up a lot of my toys one day and lined them up outside, and we shot at them with BB guns. Like I said, one of my biggest toy regrets, because in one day, wholesale slaughter on what today would have been just a crown jewel of my collection, my Cops figures. Some other figures also met their maker that day, but the Cops figures, that's just still sad in my mind. At the time, it was fun, it was cool, I thought I was cool, but over the years, that wasn't cool, that was horrible. Number 3 on the list comes from Transformers, and it was one of those awesome little mini Transformers released by Hasbro in 1984. This one was Huffer, the little orange big rig that is like 8 times smaller than Optimus Prime. That's probably an exaggeration. But anyway, I loved Huffer. I mean, I actually had Optimus. Really, I mean, when Transformers first came out, my parents got that for me. Super excited. It was an awesome Christmas. But I don't remember where I got Huffer or what happened to Huffer. But I loved him. He was one of my favorites. And I just always pretended that he was like Optimus's little brother. And he would go into the trailer, come out of the trailer, and yeah, it was awesome. Now, of course, it's one of those type of Transformers that you look at, and it's not the best of transformations, but who cares? It was awesome. And he was awesome in the cartoon. I mean, and super strong and tough. So, I was a big fan of Huffer, a big fan of this toy. Don't know what happened to it, and I wish I still had it. Now, I'm sure because they reissue Transformers all the time, I could probably find a version of him, and I'll be happy with that. But yeah, the original, I'm sure, goes for a pretty penny because Transformers are a hot collectible. Pretty much everything from the 80s is made to be a hot collectible, which is really weird. But anyway, Huffer. Great little orange truck, big rig, what have you. Number 4 at the time was one of my favorite G.I. Joe vehicles. It was one of the smaller ones, and I did have a couple bigger ones, but this one took the cake. It was the Ferret ATV. Released by Hasbro in 1985, the Ferret is a 4-wheeler for Cobra. I mean, the dark blue and red, great. just looked awesome. What stands out in my memory of loving the most, though, were the rubber tires. I mean, that little bit of like realism to it just bumps it up on the list. And I didn't have a lot of Joe vehicles at this time. I would eventually at different eras, but at this time I didn't have that many. So it stood out as being just super awesome. And all kids love motorcycles and four-wheelers and three-wheelers, and I didn't have any of the motorcycles, but I had this, so that was close enough and super awesome. I mean, yeah, I have the little, Lego knockoff one, but definitely not the same, which is where I talked about this Ferret before. And what a great name, a Ferret. I mean, just a quick little beastie that gets in and out. I mean, just fits perfectly with the four-wheeler. Now, it's not any stretch of the imagination to say the Ferret probably goes for a lot of money, because it's G.I. Joe. Just like with Transformers, big, collectible monies. And I don't foresee ever getting one again, but yeah, those memories of playing with it. I remember at my grandparents' playing with it, and I, for the longest time, had a toy chest full of old wooden blocks. And I remember building up the blocks and driving the Ferret in between, like, making little archways and stuff, and, pretending to go, off-road over the blocks. I mean, just hours of enjoyment. And at least I have those memories that will last me forever, hopefully. And yeah, the Cobra Ferret. I mean, of course, I'm a big G.I. Joe collector, and I would love any, OG Joe toy. But yeah, that was something special. Number 5 on the list comes from Kenner's Silverhawks line. Now, this figure came out in the second wave of Silverhawks figures and was released in 1987. This figure was Flashback. Now, the one thing that made him stand apart from any other Silverhawk was he wasn't silver. He was green, and he didn't have a humanoid face. He had more of like a, bird of prey type of angular face with big blue eyes on the side. Now, I didn't have any other Silverhawk figure. None of them. But I did have Flashback. And I remember exactly what happened to him. The one thing about the Silverhawk figures was that silver type coating made their body structure very weak. And when you squeezed their legs, their arms would come out with the wing attachments. Now, he didn't have the underarm wings like the other Silverhawks. He had, 2 wings on his back that would open up. And his legs were like a soft plastic rubber type of material. But when you squeezed them, the hip, which was part of the silver portion of the body, I squeezed just one too many times, I guess, and it broke his hip. Like the whole section of plastic just shattered off the side. I don't even think I had him for that long. And of all places, I remember getting him at a local Safeway around Christmas time, because they would have like a toy aisle with like all the best toys. I actually remember I got Orko maybe around the same time at the same Safeway. So yeah, you don't see supermarkets doing that anymore, really. I mean, I think the Giant by Me puts out cool Hot Wheels around Christmas time, but that's about it. Anyway, Flashback was really cool, and I think he only made maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 appearances on the cartoon, but the one episode I saw at the time just really made an impact with me because simply he was green. That's my favorite color, so I had to get the green Silverhawk. And that short time that I did have him, I loved every minute of it. He would pal around with my G.I. Joes, hang out with the Transformers, everyone. I mean, he just fit in with all of my playtime adventures, and yeah, I regret not having it, but I mean, he broke. You can't really fix a shattered hip unless you're a person. But for a Silverhawk, no, that's a death sentence, and he probably went into the trash, as sad as that was. But I'm really curious to see how much he goes for nowadays, and I'm sure, like everything else on this list, it'll be out of my grasp. But we'll take a look at that later this week when we go for our little toy hunt on eBay. But anyway, that was the 5 toys I wish I still had from when I was a kid. This is number 7 in the series, and I mean, there'll be plenty more episodes because I have a laundry list of toys that I remember having that I don't have anymore. And I know it's silly, there's a lot more important things in the world to regret and to think about, but these are the thoughts that keep me sane in an insane world. Anyway, I tried to keep this episode a little bit shorter than usual because I can kind of run off at the mouth like I'm doing now and eat up a lot of time. So hopefully it's a little bit smaller than usual and you'll have the time to watch it. But anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them and I love getting back to everyone. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. So anyway, until next time, keep being rad and stay dorky.